Today's video is brought to you by Glass Spider Publishing. Offering a wide range of hybrid book publishing services, Glass Spider Publishing is your one-stop shop for professional editing, design, publication, and book marketing services. Visit glassspiderpublishing.com today to learn more. Now for today's painting, I am going to use a 16 by 20 inch canvas. And I went back and forth on whether or not to tone the canvas beforehand, create an underpainting, or whether just to paint on it white. You could do either way. I have decided that I want to paint the canvas a color. So I'm actually going to go with this golden fluorescent red. You don't have to do it, but I think that it just helps give a little more vibrancy and kind of helps support some of the colors on the surface, but it's optional, you don't have to. But to do it, I am going to use matte medium because I do not want a thick, heavy coat of this paint. I want it to be kind of transparent. I always get asked a lot, what is the point of doing it? And like I said, the point is that it helps support the colors that are going to end up on the surface of the painting, but also what it does is it helps get rid of all of the white of the canvas so that when you're going through and painting, you don't have to work so hard to get all of those white spots covered. So I've just put a little bit of the fluorescent red and medium on my palette. I've got my 1 inch Filbert. You can use any brush that you have that you're comfortable with. I'm gonna load up with some of this red and a good amount of medium. The medium is gonna make it more transparent and make it spread farther. One thing that I also feel like doing an underpainting does for me is it kind of helps get me going. It can be really intimidating to start out, with an image or whatever it is that you want to do. There's pressure there. But starting out by painting the underpainting, there's no pressure here. It doesn't have to look good. It just has to be on there. So I'm just spending some time scrubbing it into the texture of the canvas. You can see how thin this is. You can see all my brush marks. It's thicker in some places, thinner in others, and none of that matters. Please do not waste your time trying to smooth it out and make it look perfect, because that's all you're doing is wasting your time, wasting your energy. And I know most of us have a very limited amount of time that we can paint in a day, so why waste it with something that doesn't matter? Now you can either let this dry on its own or blow dry it. Now I'm going to blow dry it. If you don't have the fluorescent red and you want to do an underpainting similar to what I've done, you could use Cad Red Light, Cad Red Medium, a completely different color. It really doesn't matter. But I think for this painting, a warm underpainting in the red, pink, orange vein is probably the best for this one. Now I want to kind of start sketching out where I want my elements. I have an idea of what I want, but I haven't really worked this out. So you're going to see me kind of go through the whole process here. I've got my Payne's Gray. You could use Mars Black if you want. I just really like the softness of Payne's Gray. And my medium, I'm using my number 4 Filbert. It doesn't matter, whatever you're comfortable sketching with. If that's a pencil, fine. The key word here is we're sketching. We are not drawing hard, crisp, definite lines. We're finding lines. And to find lines, we give ourselves options. So I'm thinning down this Payne's Gray with a good amount of medium because I don't want hard, crisp, black lines. I want soft, hazy lines that I can easily get rid of if I decide I don't like them. I'm going to hold my brush pretty far back. I'm going to stand back. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is find my horizon. We're just going to go just above center. I feel like center is right about, let's see, right about there. So I'm going to go just above center here. See how sketchy that is? Just very sketchy and indistinct. That's easy to get rid of. My house, it's going to start below the horizon. Let's see, maybe a little closer over here. The bottom, of course, is flat. It's going to come above the horizon a bit. Let's find the top, I think. I like that. This is going to pretty much follow the horizon. Maybe I've got it sloping down just a little. I feel like it's an old place that's kind of, it might be falling down a little bit, getting a little wobbly in its old age. Like me. Like so many of us. I think that's pretty good. I can refine the shape as I start painting it in, but I hope you see how indistinct it is. The more specific and aggressively, like strong your paintbrush strokes are at this point, the more permanent they are. The more sketchy and soft and, indistinct they are, the easier they're going to be to get rid of later. So I'm going to have a road. I think I want it to come down and end roughly there on that side. Maybe roughly here on that side. But we'll see. I might change that. That's just my goal. That's where I'm aiming for here. A bit of a hill, I feel like. It's blocking a bit of that road. Bring that down just a bit more. Maybe we're going to hide a bit of the road here too. Let's get some trees going. Well, I'm not going to be painting trees right now. I'm just blocking in shapes. I know I'm going to want it really dark in there where the trees are the densest, so I'm just going to kind of start with that. And come over here. And I think a general shape. Just kind of doing the outline of the shape that I want to see. Something like that. I like these shapes. So I'm going to keep going with my matte medium and Payne's Gray and start blocking in some of my shadows. I think I like that shape. The shapes overall pretty good. Kind of start blocking in the shadows here, still keeping everything pretty loose. don't add hard lines here where your ground meets your trees or where your trees meet your sky or anything. We don't want any hard lines right now. There's lots of time to bring hard lines in, and right now is not that time. And there's lots of time to get rid of the orange or to make a color opaque, to make this dark, all of that. But now is not the time. Don't be afraid to scrub. I'm using every spot of my brush right now. I'm using the side. What I'm not doing is using the flat and going back and forth like that. Look at how rigid that is. Too rigid. Way too rigid. I use my brush flat just to plop down some paint up on the side to scumble it out. I like the idea of some dense growth right in here too. No hard lines on the road. This is an old overgrown road that's not used very much, so it would not have sharp, hard lines. It'd be very soft. If you lose your road in the grass, that's okay. If you can't tell where the grass ends and the road begins, perfect. Just lots of medium mixed in with the paint. And if you get this dark color where you ultimately don't want it, that's okay. It's going to be easy to cover up. Don't worry about that. I think up here, I feel like this part is facing us, so it might be in a little bit of a shadow there. So I'm just going to add a bit more there. So I've got a little shadow. Let's give our house a little shading just to remember where those shadows are going to be. I don't want that whole side to be in shadow, but I do want it, fairly shadowed up in there. We'll have a little bit of a chimney or something going on in here. I might move that, I might get rid of it. Let's move into our sky. And I really love the idea of a non-traditional sky. And if you like a blue sky, you can do a blue sky. I like pink skies and yellow skies and green skies and all different colors. So I'm gonna go with a pink sky today, and I'm gonna use my number 8 Filbert. Use whatever you like, whatever you have. Just wet it in my jar a little. And I've got some quinacridone, some white, and some cobalt. Any colors work. If you don't have one of these colors, use whatever you have that you like. There's no color that's required. I'm gonna load with some medium first. I'm gonna grab a hint of my Payne's Gray, not a lot. I'm not trying to darken the sky. I just wanna drab down the quinacridone just a little bit. Sometimes I feel like quinacridone is just a little too aggressively phony. And some white. That's still a bit aggressive on the quinacridone. the panes is going to help kind of push it into a lavender zone, and I like that. All right, let's start with that. And that might be a bit too gray, but it could also just be because it's against this hot orange color. So for now, I'm going to leave it. I'm ignoring all of my lines because they don't matter. If we start cutting around things, again, we're going to have a hard time getting rid of those lines later. You can bring anything back. I'm going down into the tree shapes like that because I want to be able to see the sky through the trees when I'm done. I feel like I want to throw in some of this cobalt. I might have grabbed a little too much of that. And I didn't worry about cleaning off my brush. So even around my house, I'm just kind of going over the edges a little bit. A little more white. Just kind of throwing all kinds of colors into the sky here, see what happens. And that's pretty much how I'm going to do the rest of this. I'm just going to block in about all of the colors I want to see. So I've got yellow ochre or yellow oxide, different brands call it different things. And this is Liquitex Bright Aqua Green. Any teal color or blue color or any color you want really will work just fine. So some medium. I picked up a little blue with that medium and that's okay. Because all of these colors exist in the same painting. It's okay if they mix together a little bit. My brush strokes are going to help indicate the direction of my ground. So I might pull it down at an angle like that, and that helps say it's a hill. Your eye can see those things, or your brain can see those things, even if your eye can't. Even if you're not looking at it and saying, oh, I see that brush stroke that moves downward. Just kind of continue that off of here. That's good. I'm going to go right into my aqua. I did not clean my brush. Good amount, just a bit of medium. Up into that gold. It's okay if they mix. Over the road. No hard lines. Just kind of wanted a colorful explosion in this painting today. I think I'm getting it. What do you think? Sometimes I like a lot of color, sometimes not, as you guys probably know. Today feels like a day for color. It's super cold outside still, but it looks like spring. So I'm kind of feeling the spring fever a bit. Let your brushwork be loose and lively. Don't try to, you know, blur out all of your lines. Let them be there. And I think I'm actually going to mix some of my cobalt in here, just for something different. That was an idea I just had. I feel like that's exactly what I want. Just get a little color on the house. I'm going to grab some white, some of my yellow, just to give it a bit of a dirty off-white color. Maybe a hint of Payne's gray to gray it down a little bit more. I might be just a little more distinct here, the edge of my brush, simply because the house is my subject. But not at the bottom, because grasses might be growing over it. If I have a hard line at the bottom, it's going to be hard to put grasses over it that make sense. A little bit more pains. Get that shadow going. And my final color is a little cad red medium. And let's add a little Payne's to it, just to gray it down, deepen it a little bit, just so it's not a shocking red just yet. And again, maybe a little more distinct on the roof line. All right, I'm gonna let this dry, walk away from it for a minute, and then when I come back, I'll be able to kind of see it as a whole again and more effectively make decisions about my next moves. Okay, this is all dry, and I realized that I forgot to block in the road before I took a break, but that's okay. I'll block that in, and then it can dry while I work on the sky. So, some medium, there's some blue in there, that's all right. A little bit of my yellow ochre, some white, maybe a hint of Payne's to gray it down. Let's see, maybe a tiny bit of my cad red just to give it a bit of an orangey feel. Let's see how that does. That should be a good start anyway. It doesn't have to be my final color. It's just a nice place to start. All right, that's a good place to stop. In fact, I'm not even gonna clean off my brush. No need. I'm just gonna get a little more medium. And let's work on our skies. So I'm gonna go right into my quinacridone. Dirty brush, doesn't matter. A little bit of my panes. I like the panes instead of Mars Black for this bit, especially because the panes gives the quinacridone a little bit more of a violet feel than Mars Black does. Let's go a little bit lighter. Now I'm gonna pick up my paint a little bit thicker and bolder because I'm gonna start really working into this sky. And I think I'm gonna take the tiniest point of my cad red and just warm that up a little bit. A little medium. All right. So my paint is a little bit chunkier on my brush. I'm still holding it pretty far back. And I'm gonna start kind of laying it in here. I'm kind of skittering around on the flat of my brush. See how my brush is flat, but it's not covering everything. Just plop some down and kind of skitter it out a bit. I know my trees are over here, so now I'm gonna kind of start working around just a little bit, leaving some room for my trees, but going down into it so that you can definitely see the sky through it. I might change my color here and there, just add a little more white, a little more medium that's just loosely mixed in. Just kind of touching and just getting some little changes of color in there. I don't want this to be too smooth, too blendy, just nice and soft. But see, if I had left the canvas white, this would be totally different. I wouldn't have all that warmth in there. I'd have white bits poking out, and that would not be the look that I'm going for. I'm just mixing up a little bit more of my color. All three of those colors, the panes, the magenta, the cad red, and the white. And of course, some medium, just kind of loosely mixed in. Go down over that blue. If you don't, you're gonna have this weird halo, and that just looks awful. Don't be afraid of going down into another color. Just get rid of a little bit of that orange. It was too bright right there. Okay, now let's see. I need more white. I feel like this might be a little bit too much movement in the sky, but for now I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to get some medium and my cobalt. I did not clean off my brush. I'm just going to intensify this blue. I like the idea of this blue down here. I know I'm using a hard line there, but then you want to come up and break that up. You don't want your house to feel outlined with these hard edges. Just some white and medium. I might blend this one just a little bit more. I like the idea of kind of a soft, just almost like a suggestion of clouds, or suggestion of a cloud, kind of abstract. I went over my house a little bit. It's okay, all of that can be brought back. Soften this a little bit, that blue. Let's start working on our trees. I think I'm going to start on this larger clump of trees. Same brush. And I'm going to start with some panes. Just panes. Maybe a hint of medium. Nice and thick. It's not going to cover all the way just yet, but we're starting to get there. Sky is still just a little bit wet, so it's going to blend a bit, which is cool. But if it doesn't, just pick up a tiny point of medium. See how it's not mixed? And that kind of helps get that look like you're working wet into wet. I know some of you don't want to have the added expense of the medium, but I feel like once you use it and you figure out exactly what it does for you, it's going to be so valuable to you. I love how, see how transparent that is? I couldn't get that without the medium. Just using the side of my brush, a little bit of medium, it kind of activates some of the paint on the brush, and starting to create some shadow shapes up high. Just bringing that shadow up a little higher. It's okay if it goes up into the sky a bit. Maybe I'm going to grab just a little bit of blue here. Just kind of applying that a little thicker. It's just where the sky and that shadow meet. I'm just deepening it in there. Maybe on this side too. Let's work on the other side. Same thing, my panes, little medium. No hard line on the ground. Let it blur into whatever's going on below it. I'm going to go nice and dark right here next to the house. That'll help kind of draw our eye toward the house. Because remember that it's easiest to bring attention to your subject when you create contrast right at it. So here I've got my darkest color and my lightest color right up against each other, because this is the general area where I want people to start looking. Little medium, let's scooch some of that color up a bit, a little more medium. Hint of blue. Look at how nice and dark it's starting to make that right there. Just these great little hiding places. I just pulled a little bit of white into that mix, not much. I'm just going to kind of keep going with that for a minute. Just the panes, the medium, and the blue. Just adding some depth and interest here and there. Kind of dab with your brush. Experiment with different ways to move your brush and the different brush strokes you get. Think beyond, think beyond applying your paint like this. It gets very rigid. It gets very repetitive and stiff looking. So experiment using the edge of your brush. What happens if you just move it sideways? What happens if you just kind of mush and dab or turn it while you're going? Experiment with that. All of this can be covered up. All of it can be changed. You know how I like to work in layers. So no brush stroke here is the final brush stroke. Unless you look at it and you think, that's the final brush stroke. That's when you know you're done. Let's do a very similar thing here at the bottom. So my panes, my medium, let's darken up these corners. I like all these different colors that I'm starting to build in there, so I'm not going to cover all of that. That's the whole point in doing that, is you get a nuance of color that you might not be able to get otherwise. Just creating shapes and values right now. Just kind of pay attention to what structure you're working on. So when I'm working on the grasses and the flowers here, my brush strokes are really going to kind of go up and down, maybe at an angle. But when I get to the road, my brush strokes are going to be much more horizontal. because the road is laying flat, where the flowers and the grasses are kind of standing up or, you know, at an angle. So watch what I mean here. Very, very much vertical and diagonal. Down a bit to indicate the ground is flowing down. Then a bit horizontal there, where it's meeting up with the road. Just where I want a little bit of shadow in the road. Let's get some blue in there. And since my ground has a bit of that teal, I'm going to pull a bit of that in too. So teal and cobalt. A little bit of medium. And we'll start working that shadow into, the shadowy color into the darkest bit here. Just a point of medium helps smear that paint around. Some little shadows there where the grassy sloped ground meets the road. And I'm going to transition into more of this teal. I love when you start to get to the bold pops of color. Like, it might be a little premature for me to make those little chunky brush marks, but I felt like I just really needed them for a second to kind of show me where I'm heading. Nice and thick there. And then skittering it up into here. No thick line there. And yellow. Did not clean off my brush again. I do like a dirty brush, especially working in acrylic. I think when you don't clean off your brush in between colors that are going to meet, you can get that look like you're working wet into wet, even if you're not. Like here, some of this teal is wet enough to blend, but some of it isn't. But because I didn't clean the teal off of my brush, it gives that wet into wet look. And if I need to thin down my paint enough to work over top of dry paint, just a little bit of medium, and it makes it just transparent enough that it looks like I'm blending into wet paint, even if I'm not. And look at how exciting that color is that's peeking through, that blended with that hint of the fluorescent red underneath. It's just really fun, I think, really exciting. So much more exciting than just working on top of a white canvas. Just introducing punches of this color, just here and there. I don't want it to feel like two big yellow blobs right there that don't exist anywhere else. So I'm just cleaning a little bit of what's left on my brush, cleaning it off here and there throughout some other areas. And now, while I've got just a little bit of that dirty yellow blue color on my brush, let's start working on some distant tree color. So this is not going to be, trees in the foreground. There's not going to be a lot of texture. The more texture, the closer they're going to appear. The more wispy and blurred out, the more distant they're going to appear. So I'm just going to dip into some medium. I didn't even mix it. Again, that's just going to reactivate the brush or the paint that's already on my brush and help it move. So just decide where I want to see some of that color. And I'm just going to kind of make a little treetop shape. See that hint of yellow and blue? You can even grab just a little more blue. So again, I'm not obliterating all of those colors that I worked so hard for under there through all of that transparent layering. They're still there, they're still showing. They're still doing the job that I need them to do. Nothing too thick. If the color's too thick or the texture is too aggressive, it's going to throw off the perspective that I'm going for. I think that's a good start. I will probably come bolden it up here and there in a bit. Just dirtying up my brush again, a little more medium. Let's do the same thing over here. Let's put just a hint more yellow right in there. You know, I think I'm going to work on the sky a little bit more. I really want to work on the house, but right now I actually kind of feel like the house is a little bit of a shape that I don't want. And so I'm going to work on the sky because I'll be able to cut into the house and change the shape. I'm sticking with my same, just my number 8 filbert. And I'm going to start up in my pink area. So again, it's a mixture of quinacridone, a little bit of Payne's, a little bit of cad red for some warmth, and some white. I'm going to get a good amount of white in there. Some medium. That's pretty good. Now I might actually fill some of these spots just a little bit more than I did before, but I'm still just kind of using the side of my brush. It's okay to go over top of the tree colors that you did. Just don't obliterate them. Still leaving hints of these other colors. Just little bits in there, but I'm going to smear it out. I just don't want it to be too sharp in there. Maybe a little more white. Just picking up little bits of medium, because again, that'll help make it look like I'm blending wet into wet, even though this is completely dry. So if you feel like you have a hard time with acrylic because it dries and so you're not able to get any blending, I highly recommend that you jump on the matte medium bandwagon. It's gonna be a really helpful tool for you. For those of you who say matte medium gets sticky, that tells me that you're working the paint too much. If you think matte medium, or if you're experiencing matte medium being sticky, that means that you're working it over and over and over as the medium is drying. As the medium dries, yeah, it's going to start tacking up and it's going to get a little stickier. So you don't want to work it that much. I never experience it being sticky because I just don't overwork it. Just a bit of that color in there, but I don't want to have it be too bold. That's looking good. So just more white, a little medium. Still like that idea of kind of a cloud right in here, but a very abstract one. So I'm just laying in my color, I'm not worried about the edges. Just kind of putting the color where I want to see it. And now I pick up a little medium. I can break it up, blend it, blur it, all of those things. medium. And let's go into the cobalt. I did not clean my brush. Some medium. And I want to work on reshaping this house just a little bit. I'm going to bring the roof line down a bit. And this side too. Just feels a bit much. Just get rid of that line. I don't want it to be obvious that I kind of outlined that shape. But I very dramatically changed the size and shape of that. I just wiped off some of that blue, picked up some white and some medium. I cleaned my brush. I'm gonna get some white. I just wanted a little bit more of a pure white, and I had so much blue on there that I was not gonna get it. There we go. Kind of skitter it down into that blue. Almost feel like that blue is getting away from me, but I'm not gonna worry about it right now. I am gonna give it a little bit of a break. Just a bit of medium there to smear out that white. I've got a little space heater blowing on me, so now my palette is drying really, really quick. Just back into my pink, nice and pale. Maybe my brush texture here will be just a little bit more, just a little more bloppy, a little more texture to it. Sometimes I feel like when I'm starting to struggle a little bit, it's because my texture is too soft. So breaking up that texture a bit, and I don't know, I feel like it helps kind of change my idea of what I'm looking at. I'm even gonna pick up a little medium. Maybe I'm gonna bring a bit of that pink down into here. That's much better, actually. The blue felt, I like the idea of the blue toward the horizon, but just above the house there, I think it felt a bit confining. Keep it transparent though. Yeah, I like that. Just getting rid of that, I feel like it's gonna open me up to some options. So that's why the edge of my house is very messy right now. Once I come in and start painting the actual house, I can fix that. Now I know it probably feels just a little early to start on details like tree trunks, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And that's because I want to keep my tree trunks from being too overly distinct. So if I do it now, I know I'm going to have to come back and layer other colors in here, which will help break it up a little bit. I'm going to use a palette knife. It doesn't matter what size or shape of palette knife you use. It doesn't matter if it's plastic. It doesn't matter if you decide you just want to use a brush. Do this however you like. I'm just going to kind of touch my knife into my Payne's Gray, just a little bit on the edge. Not a lot. And I'm gonna come in here and just kind of start scraping in some tree trunks wherever I feel like I might want to see them. They're not gonna be real distinct. They're gonna be broken lines. They're gonna be kind of weird, but you know what? This is a really overgrown area. If everything is too distinct right now, or at all, I feel like it's gonna feel phony. In fact, let's see, I'm gonna I ran through just a hint of medium and then touched into my Payne's Gray. Let's see what that does. Maybe I'll even touch into the medium just a little bit again. And I'm gonna kind of scrape. Oh yeah, I like that. Oh, I'm gonna do that more. Okay, so let me show you again what I did. Touch into the medium, touch into the paint. Don't pick up big blobs of paint, and maybe touch into your medium. Just again, when they don't mix like that, it makes your paint apply in a very different way. Some of it applies, you know, sometimes the paint applies, sometimes the medium applies, and you get a break, but it's also a little bit smoother. So I'm gonna do that again. Some medium. I'm going to pull just a bit more paint in this time because I want to get like a tree trunk. I'm going to pull that sideways. I know that looks weird and kind of phony right now, and that's okay. I'm not worried about that. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Just a weird mix of paint and medium. Let's get that down. So maybe we can see where the tree is growing out of here. pull little shapes. Okay. Scraping little shapes in like that as well. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing with some white. I did not clean off my palette knife. There's still some Payne's Gray. I'm going to run the edge of it through some white. And I might touch into my medium just a little bit. I'm going to add some kind of little highlighty bits to some of these shapes. I'll come back to that. There we go. Oh, medium. Oh, those two shapes are too similar. There we go. Okay, those trees look a little wild right now, but I can see exactly where I'm heading and I'm liking it so far. So let's let that dry. That paint's a little thick, and let's work on the ground a bit. All right, let's start. I'm going to start with some cobalt and a hint of teal. Just some of my blues mixed together. It doesn't matter if it's more cobalt or more teal, just a little mixture, a little bit of medium. And holding my brush far back because I want to work really loose here. I'm just going to kind of start laying it in. Plop down a good heavy amount and break it up. Doesn't really matter if I get too aggressive with this color because I'm going to come back with the panes and really knock a bunch of it back. Sorry, my dog is on high alert today. She's protecting us from the mailman and gardeners. People walking dogs, kids walking home from school. She's got us protected. Just adding some of this color where I feel like I'm going to want to see it. I know I'm going to have like big kind of flowers and stuff growing here, but I want to see some of this color through there. So that's why I'm adding it here. Still not trying to cover all of that orange. I'm really happy with the way that orange is playing with all of the other colors. So I'm glad I decided the last minute to do that. Just about when, without an underpainting today, but I knew I wanted to paint really loose, and so the last thing I wanted to do was worry about covering white dots. I'm going to go more into the teal, just mostly this teal color, a little medium. A little bit bolder brush strokes, see that? A little bit of texture. I'm not blurring everything out. I might even go heavy right here. Nice thick application of that color. As that teal, or as the cobalt is working its way off of my brush, my teal gets a little more vibrant. That's really exciting. Pick up just a little medium, and I just want to smear it over this yellow. Again, that yellow's dry, but doing that with the medium almost makes it look like I worked into that yellow paint while it was still wet, even though I absolutely did not. And we'll do a similar thing on the other side. Love the way these two colors are working together, the teal and the yellow oxide. They're really beautiful together. Okay, I think I'll save a little bit more of that for the detail phase. That's a good place to stop and clean my brush. I'm going to go back into my yellow. Good amount, and a little medium. And I don't want to lose all of that bright pop. It's my yellow, little point of medium. I just want to kind of skitter it through here. Again, just little punches of that yellow here and there. You don't want it to feel like we've got polka dot, and that's it. We want it to exist in just a few other places. That medium will dry clear. I know it's white when you first put it on like that, but it will dry clear. I'm going to go back down to my number 4 filbert and let's work on the sky just a little bit more. So a bit of medium and some white. My white is a little dirty, but that's okay. A little more medium. So I want this cloudy area to be the boldest right there. So that's where I'm going to start. Kind of work it out from there. Dabs. Just getting that color on there. Obviously I don't want those weird lines, the weird angle brush strokes, but that just gave me the coverage that I was looking for. A little more medium, just gonna scumble some lighter color up. And I'm probably gonna call the sky done here pretty quick. Tired of messing with that. I think that's looking pretty good. I might just scumble a little bit of this white mixture just to kind of tamp down the pink just a bit. It's mostly medium on my brush. It's just kind of medium that's activating that white, the little bit of white paint that's left. All right, I'm going to stick with my number 4, and I'm going to get more of this teal yellow mixture. So some medium, a little yellow, bit of teal, not mixed in. Maybe I'll drop it down, pick it back up, drop it down, pick it back up, little medium. Let's get just a little bit more deliberate with some of these shapes and colors in here. Absolutely go over those tree trunks. The tree trunks don't exist on the outside of the tree exclusively. They go into the tree. The foliage covers them. Maybe a little more blue or teal and medium. Maybe there's a little bit down here. And let's do the tree on the other side. Same thing. Little medium, mix that in. Yellow. Grab a bit of my teal, plop it down, pick it back up. Just experiment with different mixtures, and that's really given me, you know, I can get this smear of different colors and different opacities in one brush stroke. That's why I like to do that. Helps everything look a little bit more dynamic and not quite so stiff. A little more medium. A little more teal. That was a bit aggressive. Grab some of that. Now we can kind of explore the shadows in our trees, and that's going to give us the opportunity to cover up anything we don't like. Sticking with my number 4, going to get some panes and medium. Really loading up with panes here. But then I think I'm going to add some of my quinacridone. So I have a nice dark, warm color, maybe a hint of the cadmium for a little bit of opacity and to increase that warmth. And I'm looking at where I want it the darkest, and that's really where I'm putting this the most. Cover up anything that was too aggressive. I'm going to obliterate some of my tree trunks a bit. Even take it over top of some of that green. Especially down here, dark, dark, dark. I like that. Little medium, I'm going to blend that into the sky a bit, I think. Let's go straight into the panes. A little medium, kind of smear that. Yeah, I like that. A little medium, and then it's just kind of like a smear and a bounce here so that we get like an interesting transition between the colors on the ground and the colors under the trees. I am going to go to a smaller, softer brush. So this is my number 8 Filbert. It's very soft, Little medium, little yellow. I'm going to work on a hint of detail in these trees. And by detail, I mean, you know, some very much more intense color that's very strategically placed, that can feel like foliage that's maybe just a little bit closer, a little more defined. Maybe there's a hint of it over here. You don't have much going on over there except shadows. And we can put our blue in there too. Let's do a bit of that. Medium. I think that's a good start for the trees. Let's move on. I think I'm ready to start working on my house a bit. And I'm actually going to stick with my number 8 filbert. Let's start with this side of the house because it needs some work to fix up the shape. So I'm going to mix up some of my yellow, some of my white, and some of my panes. Just get that nice kind of dirty old house color going. Now I need to fix up this shape, so let's say now the hard part about making videos is I have to stand off to the side to paint, so that line might be crooked. It's hard for me to tell. That's not too bad. I'm gonna just grab some more white, still have my dirty brush. I'm just gonna scumble it in. I'm gonna let there be some texture between the colors. It's not a perfect mix, just getting that painterly blend. Keep it blurry at the bottom. Let's pull a little more panes into that mix. A little medium. I like that better. Pretty good. I'm gonna wipe off some of that paint just on the side of my palette and pick up some panes in medium. And let's work on this side. A little more white, a little more yellow, just muddy. I know that house is looking really awful and I'm not worried about it. It's okay. So some panes, let's get the roof fixed up. Right now I'm just kind of still worried about the kind of the map that I'm making. Where I'm gonna have what color, where I'm gonna have what value, and kind of getting my shape in order. So my roof color, and I'm gonna define the shape of it a bit more because it got crazy over here. And let's give it a suggestion of that color down this side. All right, it's been a few days since I was painting, and so I've gotten away from it. I let myself forget about it, and now I'm back, and I feel like there's a couple areas where I'm gonna switch gears. So I'm using the exact same palette of colors, and all I did was stick this in my wet palette. So these are all the paints I was using last time. Just kept it in my wet palette so they didn't dry out. Before I get too crazy shifting gears though, I need to just finish blocking in some of my areas. So my road is really screaming out for some attention. So let's do that. And then we can start working on some of our details and merging some of these colors in a little bit more of a less patchy way. I'll show you what I mean when we get there. So for my road, I'm gonna use my number 4 Filbert. It really doesn't matter what brush you choose to use. And we're gonna create a very neutral color. It's a road, so I don't want it to be, terribly vibrant. It's gonna be made of dirt and stuff. So we're gonna create kind of that color. So I'm gonna start with my yellow ochre and a bit of panes. Let's get some white in there. And I feel like it needs just a hint of warmth because the panes in the yellow can make a bit of a greenish color, and I don't want it to be greenish. That's getting there. Just a hint more warmth. Let's start there and see how that is. A little bit of medium. That's not too bad. I think it's still a little on the green side, but that's okay. So we're just gonna lay it down. Definitely overlap a little bit. Don't stop right at your road and cut this sharp line. That's so phony, and it's gonna be so hard to get rid of later. Let's warm that up just a little more as we move forward. Remember that as things move toward you, they tend to get warmer. As they move away, they tend to get cooler. So since this is moving toward us, this road, we're going to warm it up a little bit more. With that hot orange underpainting, though, it is kind of difficult to gauge a color like this because in relation to that orange under there, this color does look fairly cool. But don't worry about that right now. Definitely overlapping some here. And as we move back toward our house, I'm just going to add a little bit more white, and I might throw a hint of this teal in there because, again, as things move away, they get cooler. So let's cool it off. I'm not making it blue. I'm just changing the temperature a bit with some of this teal. There we go. Like that. Right here on this line, I'm not going to overlap as much because I want to make sure that this looks like a hill. If this looks like a hill, then it's cutting in front of the road. The road isn't going to overlap it. But over here, it might overlap a bit. Same here, I want this to appear to be a hill, so the road's not going to overlap it there, but it might overlap here. And just flavor this with some of that cooler color. Let's work on our corners here. I kind of have the idea of like some tall grasses with some bright colored flowers, something that kind of pulls you into the road and gets you moving toward the house. So let's start with that. And I think I would really like to mimic some of the color that's up in our sky in here. So let's do that. I'm going to go to a bigger brush. It's my number 8. Again, doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on having the exact same tools as me, because it's mostly about comfort. It's not about the right tool, the right brush, the right color. It's about what's comfortable for you. I'm gonna zoom you in there just a little bit. So I'm gonna start with a bit of my quinacridone, because in the sky we had quinacridone with a little Payne's gray to kind of make this a bit violet-y. Let's get a bit of white in there. It was a little light. There we go. I like that better. A little medium. I'd like to keep the color slightly transparent. That's why I'm adding so much medium. I'm just going to hold my brush like this so that I can use it flat. And I'm really just going to I'm just touching gently. I'm not making like a shape or a brush stroke. Overlapping this blue a bit kind of helps bridge the gap between the blue and the colors we're going to move into here. A little medium there. We can overlap our road a bit. And you don't have to get crazy and get your hands in there like I am. That's just how I paint. Let's darken that with some more panes. Quite dark there. Because obviously inside this clump of tall grasses, it's going to be darker. I actually want to keep a bit of this color going because right here where the road kind of meets, I just feel like it needs a bit of a shadow, and I like this color for a shadow. So it's that same kind of quinacridone paints mixture. I'm going to pick up just a little medium, see that just on the edge of my brush, and that's the edge I'm going to put down. Just kind of creating a bit of a, I know that's weird looking right now. It's okay, because it's not done. A little more medium. A little over here. I know sometimes it can be hard to make yourself do something that looks awful. So this does, that looks pretty awful, but it's not going to look awful when I'm done. So don't judge something based on how it looks in this moment. Sometimes you got to lay down some paint that does not look right, because the next layer is going to make it look right. We need a little in here. A little medium, because it makes the paint apply heavier, but without making it too dark. It thins it down a little bit. And I think I'm going to scumble just little hints of the shadow into the road here and there. Since I'm not done with the road, I can cover up any of it that I feel like is too much. In fact, I just dunked my brush directly into my water. There's a little drip of water on there. I'm going to grab some paints and mix it in there until it's almost flowing. That is not flowing, so it's not wet enough. I dunked into the water again. See, I got a drip. Mix it back in there. Yep, that's flowing a little bit, so that's good. And I'm just gonna flick. I know some of you aren't comfortable with flicking. You have a hard time doing it, or you don't like the way it looks, or whatever, and that's fine. Remember, you're always free to do things however you want. You don't have to do exactly as I do if you don't like it or aren't comfortable with the technique. It's okay that it's getting up into the other areas. I'm just going to give a hint of it on this road up here. I like that bit of texture. Let's see if there's enough on my finger. I can kind of flick it that way too. That's fun. Full contact painting. That's what this is. I'm going to go back to my number 4. And I'm going to get some of my yellow and a little bit of, let's try the cad red. I need a nice orange. I don't feel like that orange pops quite like I want it to. So let's throw a little more yellow in there and some quinacridone, see what happens there. There we go. That's about what I'm looking for there. Some medium, I want it to be fairly transparent. And the same thing I did with the quinacridone mixture here. I'm going to do that a bit through here. Picked up a little more medium. Start introducing some of this color in here. You can even get it up. The more your colors mix together, the more these colors aren't special. I think the more integrated everything's going to look. So if you just have this orange just right down here, it's going to feel weird. But if it moves ever so slightly up into some of your other colors, then I feel like it's going to look better. Nice and smeary. Don't try and make this look like flowers right now. We're just introducing the color. There's time enough for details in a minute. This is just about introducing the color to the area. I like the way that orange and teal play off of each other. They have a nice vibration between them. Let's get a bit of that over here too. That is looking good. Let's keep that color going. I'm going to put just a flavor of it up here. Kind of overlapping into this dark area, because that dark area, there's a bit of a line between it and the yellow, but I feel like that orange is a nice bridge there. So this is what I was saying about, you know, getting the colors so it doesn't look splotchy or whatever the term was that I used. Just introducing it into other areas. So we still have the patches of the bold, bright, solid colors, but there's a bit of transition. Just wherever you feel like it's weird or boring or just needs something else. I had not planned on using quite this much of the orange color, but I like it. I think it's doing the thing. See, as a whole, you can start to see a little bit more of a movement up through the painting, just because, well, part of it's because of the path is painted in now, but also the way that that orange is coming up through and it's leading you to the house. The roof is going to have a lot of this color on it, and that magenta that's kind of bringing us back up and mirroring the sky color. I'm going to just go back and forth here. Let's get one more medium, just going right into my yellow ochre. I did not clean my brush. A little more medium. I'm gonna do kind of the same thing. Maybe I'm gonna let these brush strokes be a little bit more thicker paint here. Not quite so transparent, and I'm not gonna blur everything out quite so much. Just paint nice and thick. There's a bit of texture in there. See, I can overlap that dark area now. So I was saying that that dark area looked kind of forced, kind of weird, but now where I can overlap it with some of these colors, it's gonna appear to be a little bit more deliberate and natural. And clean my brush. Let's do the same thing with our teal. So some teal, a little medium. But I'm gonna apply it a bit heavier, a bit more deliberately. Maybe I should use a larger brush. We'll see. Maybe I'll change to a larger brush in a bit. Don't keep those colors completely separate. Pretty much straight aqua there. Good, a bit of texture. Little medium there. I don't know if, because this has taken me a few days to do, I don't know if I've explained to you that sometimes when I pick up just a blob of medium like that, it's because it helps give a very random application. It gives little bits of paint that are purely thick and opaque, but then it also gives little bits where the paint doesn't apply, or the paint is very transparent and smeared, almost kind of smoky looking. So I like that difference. Here, let me see if I can show you on my palette here. So I pulled up a blob of paint and I'm gonna dip into a little bit of medium. And then, let's just do it on this piece of cardboard here so you can see. Then when I apply the paint, see how it's very streaked and very random, and you can't really get that just from using the paint on its own. And I think I like some splatters, so I again dipped into water. If you saw that drip there, let's grab a little bit of paint. Always bring the paint to the water. If you have a hard time with splattering, It might be because you're bringing the water to your paint and trying to mix it in. But drip your water down on a piece of clean palette and then bring a bit of paint to it just until it starts to run. Scoop up as much as possible. Yeah. You don't want a lot of that in the road, but I'm not terribly worried about it. Might as well not waste the paint that ends up on your finger. I feel like I have a weird transition right here. That feels strange to me. So, some flicks. Flicks help so much. They cover things a lot better than I think we give them credit for. I cleaned off my brush. Little extra drip. I'm going to do that with some of my yellow. There's not very much yellow here, so. Just right up here where those colors kind of meet the distant trees, a little bit more of a slow controlled flick makes much smaller splatters. It's when you really get in there and flick it hard that you get the big sploppy bits. And sometimes I like the big sploppy bits, and sometimes you just need something a little more subtle. See, I did not reload my brush, I just flicked it harder and it made it more splotchy. I'm going to try my fan brush here for a second. I may decide it's not the right brush for what I want to do, but let's just try and see what happens. I wet my fan brush in the water, and I'm going to pick up a bit of Payne's. I think I'll mix it in here. I just want to give the idea of some stems and grasses in here, but I'm not going to go crazy. So I'm not going to like draw, you know, these very specific shapes. I'm just going to kind of touch. I'm almost kind of scratching, barely touching, barely touching the canvas. That's pretty good. Move them all around in different ways. You just want a suggestion of these lines. Oh yeah, I like that. This paint is pretty dry, so I'm not getting huge applications of it. In fact, I just picked up more Payne's, just solid Payne's. Let's really darken these lower corners here. Not blacking it out, there's still a hint of that magenta in there. Let's go to a bit of a softer, smaller brush. This is my number 8 Filbert. This is the Filbert from my original line of brushes, the small soft one. And I'm gonna mix up a little more of my orange. So some of my yellow. This is where we had it before, so I'll just go ahead and mix it in there. And I'm just going to go straight into the quinacridone rather than adding any of the cad red. There's still a little cad red in that mixture that I'm mixing it into. Nice bright orange. And let's make some flower shapes. Well, not flower shapes. I still want it to be fairly abstract. I'm going to grab just a little point of medium on the end of my brush. hold it far back. It takes away a little control, so we're not in here going, you know, flower petal, flower petal. I don't want that. I just want to kind of even. Sometimes I find that I have a hard time being random, so we're gonna make the paint do random for us. I'm just picking up water, mixing it in there. That's nice and flowy. I am gonna flick pretty aggressively so that it's bloppy, and then kind of touch a bit. I like that so much better. But if you're more comfortable using a brush to make flower shapes, by all means, you do what you need to do. I can only show you what works for me. Everything else is up to you. You have to figure out what works for you. Maybe I will just touch a couple of shapes since I did on the other side. Just add a little more quinacridone to that mixture. So that is how the whole thing is starting to come together. Let's go work on the house and maybe the sky a little bit more, because I know I'm gonna wanna make a few touch-ups to the ground in front of the house, and I don't want the house to feel like it's floating on top. So our house right now looks a little rudimentary and boring, but we're gonna change that. I'm gonna take my 1/2" angle. Let's start with the roof. I'm gonna get some of my CAD red medium. Maybe I'll just tone it down just a little bit with some paints, not a lot, little medium. I'm gonna apply this paint fairly thick though. I want it to kind of feel like maybe I applied it with a palette knife. You certainly could. Not forcing it to cover all of that color underneath. Let's get a good application of just the solid red. Just solid red, give it a nice pop. It's where we really want the viewer to look. So the brighter and more unique this area is to the rest of the painting, the more interesting it will be, and it will catch your viewer's eye. You know what, I was telling you before about one of the ways to create the most interest for your subject is to create large amounts of contrast. Well, I think the biggest amount of contrast I have to this color here is going to be my cobalt. So why don't we just get some cobalt? Let's just see what happens. I can get rid of it if I don't like it. I'm not going to blend them. Just introducing a hint of this color in there. They have a nice vibration with each other, the red and this blue. I kind of like it. That's good for now. Let's really work the sides of this house. So my yellow, some panes. We're gonna go nice and gray. Some white. Just creating kind of a dirty, grayish color. Maybe a hint more yellow. That's a bit dark. I'm gonna lighten that up some more, just mix straight into my white there. This side is, the side that's gonna be taking the most light, so I want it to be the brightest. Little medium, so I can blend into this other side without covering it. Let's dirty that up again, a little bit darker. Just kind of playing with some different colors and values here. See how much personality we can give this little house. Oh, I had a weird little clump of paint in my brush. Sometimes smearing with your fingers is the best. It's the only way you can get certain looks sometimes. More panes, more yellow, maybe even more yellow. Let's get a little rusty here, a little medium. Yeah. One last thing. I just want to, I loosely cleaned off my brush. There's still a little bit of paint in there. I just loosely want to intensify a shadow right here under the eaves. Oh, look, I smeared a little of my red in there. That's okay. All right, and let's work on the other side here. So same mixture, just, in different amounts. We'll get a bit of our yellow, mix into our gray. Maybe, let's just see what happens. I'm gonna throw a tiny hint of my turquoise in there. A little more panes, let's go darker. A little medium. You don't have to blend or smear with your fingers if you don't want to. Let's grab some more white, maybe with just a smattering of that dirty yellow, a little medium. I'm just going to place it down there and clean, little panes. Just a bit of shadow, nice and dark. That might be too wet. That paint's pretty wet, so my shadow's not really sticking. That's fine. I'll just leave it. I'll come back to it. And let's start working on our road a bit more, kind of usher it toward the final look. Back to my number 8 Filbert, my small one, and my road color. So some yellow, some panes. Hint of my teal. Cool that color off a bit. And white. It's a pretty loose mixture. I don't want to cover everything. I like all those nuances of color underneath. Just gonna put this down to give the road a final color. As I move forward, I'm going to grab a little more of that yellow. We're going to just start warming it up a little bit. See how thick I'm applying that paint. Want the road to feel substantial. Just a flavor of that color in there. That was a bit more than a flavor, but that's okay. I can come back from it. Just mix it into this darker grayer color. A little more white. That's better. I think I'm just going to kind of fizzle this color out. I like the color that I've got down here. I'll just keep tiny bits of it just to remind us that it's all part of the same, road. Just bits of that super dark greenish gray that I mixed up in the first place. like that. I'm going to put just a hint of it throughout, especially toward the sides of the road, where it meets up with the dark. I feel like that's a good transition from the dark into the road. Much better. I feel like painting is all about following intuition. You know, what feels right to you? What do you think you should do next? You know, if you look at something and you think, well, that looks flat, you know, what does your intuition say about how to fix it? Just try different things. That's how we learn. Even if those things we try don't turn out, you've learned something. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to sit down to paint and just knock something out of the park. I want to push myself. I want to learn something new. I want to see if I can have an aha moment. And an aha moment usually comes during times of frustration, I've discovered. If I'm feeling frustrated about something, it's just not turning out, but I keep at it, I am very well possibly going to have that aha moment. Don't want the road to disappear into the house, so bit of a dark line there to separate them. And I still want just little flicks in the road that indicate pebbles or stones or divots or whatever. So I cleaned off my brush. I've got a little extra water. I've got this muddy color. There's not a lot of color there. That's why I just dipped right into it. And a very slow, controlled splatter. Just to kind of break things up a little bit. I am just going to work on the sky just a little bit more. I feel like it's pretty good, but I want to intensify this cloud. I got some splatters and some smears in there. We'll either get rid of them or we won't, and honestly, I'm not terribly worried about that part. I'm going to stick with my 1/2 inch angle, and I'm going to get some white, just pure white. And a little bit of medium, just dunked on the end again. Flat, just kind of scumbling it into a shape. I want a very abstract cloud. I don't want something that's very, you know, puffy and kind of the icon of a cloud. I don't want that. I just want the color to suggest it. Just picking up little bits of medium so I get that real wispy look. Just medium. I think I like that better. I'm just gonna add one more little plop of a pretty solid white, just kind of to the center of the shape, right where I feel like it would be the heaviest. I don't want a line. I don't want the cloud to be outlining the house. I'm gonna go back to my larger number 4 filbert, and I am gonna start working on just some of the final details. Do this however feels right to you, whatever you feel like you need. I feel like some areas here, it's just a little speckly looking because the paint was so thin. So I'm just mixing up a thicker version of really what color I see there. And I'm just gonna kind of plop it over top. It just kind of helps eliminate some of those little specks. Keep lightening that just a little. There we go. I don't need to get rid of all of the specks, but I do want just some of this color in there. And maybe some of our orange, like we have on the bottom. Just little bits. Let's go aggressive with that yellow. It just was not getting the point. Okay. Medium. I've kind of added a bit of it already. I'm gonna go a little messy and a bit chaotic in here. Maybe not quite so much on this side, just a little. My little number 8. Let it create the look of some grasses. Definitely up over top of the house. That's why I wanted to do the house real quick, so that I could do this and I could take these colors over the top of it. Over the road here too. Maybe let's take just a hint of white and mix it in here just for a slightly lighter color. To really illuminate the slope there. And the same over here. And let's do a similar thing with our teal. Just a bit of white to brighten it. That might be too much. Medium. I'm actually really happy with how this is turning out. I do have a couple things that I want to do before I call it done. And for the most part, that's going to involve just my number 5 round, mostly just Payne's Gray and Matte Medium. We're going to do some glazing. So you want to make sure that everything is dry. If you have some areas that are still wet, go ahead and pull out your blow dryer or just walk away from it for a while. Make sure it's completely dry before you move on to this next part. All right, we're gonna start with our house. So I've got my number 5, I wet it in my water. I'm gonna pick up some Payne's Gray. Let's see, can you see that? There we go. Drop it down there, and I'm gonna get a good amount of medium. See how much medium I picked up? Mix it in there. I want it to be fairly transparent. I'm gonna roll quite a bit of it off of my brush. I don't want a huge amount of paint. But I'm gonna kind of work in these shadows a little bit more. Right along the edge of the eaves, but I don't want that line, so there. Maybe just a tiny bit of some heavier paints. It's a very expressive style of painting, you know, using colors that aren't quite realistic. It's a little bit fauvist, but not quite. It's a fun way to play and just explore what you can do, explore what the paint can do, figure out what you like, what you don't like. I really enjoy painting this way. A little more of that thin mixture and maybe just a little blob of medium. I just feel like I want it to seem a little darker and smearier right there. And maybe here as well. Figure out what your marks are. We all have our marks that we make. You know, mark making is very unique to each one of us. So try out the marks that I'm showing you first, and if that doesn't work for you, figure out how else you can do it. Nice and dark right under here. A little medium. Ooh, in fact, I want to explore something here. I'm going to just roll some of that paint off. Just a thought that I had. I'm going to grab some of this cad and some of this cobalt. They are not going to make purple because the cadmium is so orange. It's a very orange color. And the cobalt, yeah, they are not going to make orange or purple. But a very, very dark, dusty violet. Let's see what happens with just a hint of this over in here. Just so it's not so black and white. I don't necessarily want it to just be, you know, black and white. That'll just add a little flavor to it. Maybe I just want to glaze that over this whole side. It feels a little too light. I like that. We'll just put a suggestion of it over here. I'm going to do a similar thing now with my white. So a little bit of white, just a little bit. Good amount of medium. And a little extra medium just for funsies. Put that there and smear it. That's the brighter side of our house, but I don't want it to be white. I'm just adding just a flavor of a highlight. And if you want a window on this side, I wasn't going to put a window, but now I'm kind of feeling like maybe I want one. I'm going to do it very, very simply. So my 1/2 inch, I'm going to get this Payne's matte medium mixture. Maybe just a little bit more Payne's in here. And on the bottom half of my brush, some medium. Can you see how I did that? I think I'm just going to go. I think that's it. It's just about as simple as you can get. It's just a suggestion of a window. Actually, I need to change the angle just a little bit. There. At the base of the house here, sticking with my number 5 round, I'm gonna get a little bit of this cobalt. Whoops, sorry, a little bit of cobalt. And I'm gonna mix it in with a little bit of the teal here. Little medium. And maybe I'll just pull some little shapes over the edge of the house a bit. Just keep that color in here so it doesn't feel randomly added. Just little dots of it. Ooh, you know what? While we're still here, I'm gonna get this color that I made, the cadmium cobalt mixture, because they almost make a chromatic black. Not quite, but pretty close. Maybe I'll add just a tiny bit of panes in there to nudge it ever so slightly closer to black. That's pretty good. And in my house here, little extra bits of shadow. Little extra cad red down the side. Some panes and some medium. And let's glaze a little bit of shadow in here. Not shadow so much as just wear, just making it look old and worn. Because as much of this red as I can tamp down and make it less vivid, that's going to make sure that when I come back with a clean brush and just my cad red, that I can make a big impression with that bright color. And that is exactly what I want. So from here on out, I'm just going to stick with this brush. I'm just going to come through, use the exact same colors and techniques we've already talked about, and just add little points of detail. So I'm probably just going to let myself get lost in that process and not talk to you a whole lot. I hope that you're able to find that exact same space for yourself while you're painting this. I am gonna move down actually to a number 2 round, just to get some little sketchy stems in here.